Before we get started, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications whenever we share a video. A couple of days ago, Apple dropped an update to the iPod Touch, making it the first update in several years with really only one major change, and that's the inclusion of the A10 Fusion chip, the same chip that's found inside of the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus, as well as the 6th generation iPad. There's also a bit more room for more apps, games, and music, as the 7th gen iPod Touch now comes in a 256GB variant, but it'll also cost you $400. So aside from those two updates, you still get the same 4-inch Retina display, which is a bit jarring at first if you're not used to this tiny form factor anymore. And then there's also the same 8-megapixel camera on the back and a 1.2-megapixel camera on the front if you're into taking photos with your iPod. There's also a 3.5mm headphone jack and a Touch ID-less home button. So with all that said, there's still one question that I find myself asking: who exactly is this product for? Of course, one of the obvious answers is kids. The size, the 6 somewhat fun-looking color options, the portability, and I suppose the price all suggest that this could be a perfect starter iPhone for kids, minus the actual making phone calls part. Although, if you really wanted to, and since the iPod Touch is in the Apple ecosystem, and if you're connected to Wi-Fi, you could in theory make all the calls you need to with FaceTime. You could also use iMessage to message your friends and family, and Safari or the App Store to browse the web and download games. Speaking of gaming, the A10 Fusion chip that's been added to this iPod could really help with the overall gaming experience, as the chip now makes the iPod Touch 2 times faster in performance and about 3 times faster in graphics in comparison to the previous generation iPod Touch. During actual gameplay testing, it seemed fine. There's no real lag or issues when playing games. The back of the iPod Touch did get a bit warm, but there's nothing too crazy going on. One interesting side note to point out here, however, with performance, Geekbench scores for the iPod Touch and other devices like the 6th gen iPad seem to be a bit different, even though they run the same A10 Fusion chip. So when you open up the Geekbench app, you can see that the processor for the A10 Fusion on the 6th generation iPad is running at 2.3 gigahertz, while the iPod Touch is at 1.6 gigahertz. Now this could be happening because of the smaller battery inside of the iPod Touch, but regardless, it's still yielding some lower scores for the iPod Touch in comparison to the iPad. Again, I suppose most younger children won't really care about display size or performance in general, but I also don't think Apple made or would admit that this was created strictly for kids, even though the entire FaceTime promo image on the iPod Touch website features all young teens. And so my follow-up question is, as an adult, would you buy this for yourself? I think the answer is most likely no. Personally, I struggled to use this thing in my very, very brief time with it. I'm so used to bigger displays at this point that typing and watching YouTube videos and just overall usage has been a bit of a struggle. The only practical scenario that I could see myself using this iPod Touch more than just a handful of times is for music. But why would I do that if I already own an iPhone or really any new smartphone these days? If you have one, chances are you have far more storage already available on your iPhone or Android device than the entry-level 32 gig option with the iPod Touch. And it's probably just far more convenient to use your phone as your main music player as opposed to buying a separate iPod Touch. I can see people maybe taking the iPod Touch to the gym, as it's much lighter and less distracting than having your phone going off every 5 seconds in your pocket, but even that might be a bit of a stretch. So with all of that said, I suppose there's really no reason at all to purchase an iPod Touch, in my eyes, at least in 2019, unless this is for your kids or some sort of family shared device. And even then, let's say you have an iPhone 8, which is approaching 3 years old at this point, and you're looking to upgrade your iPhone in September, you could just sell it and recoup some money, or you could just keep it and use it as what you would with an iPod Touch for your kids and family, and it would probably be a far more enjoyable experience overall. I could very well be wrong that there's no reason to buy one in 2019, but I don't know for sure, so I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know what you think about the iPod Touch. If you use one at home, what do you use it for? And if you're planning on upgrading to the newer model, in the comment section down below. This has been Dan with Mac Rumors. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.